So a very, very warm welcome to everybody joining this webinar. And my name is Lisa Esperson and I work for the Joint Secretariat. I'm joined today with my colleague Sophie.
Yes, hello everyone. Very good to see you here, and Lisa and I are looking very much forward to the next hour with you.
Thanks, Sophie. So this webinar is all about communicating for impact, and it's all about how you can use communication to really show off what your project has achieved, also to a wider audience and beyond your normal target audience or stakeholders. Great. Okay, let's move on to the first slide. Okay, so we are in this webinar room. We know the situation of the coronavirus has made things a bit different for us. So we're not in a meeting room like we normally would be, or a conference. We're actually in our office meeting room. And that means that the technicalities for the webinar are a bit different than they usually would be if we were all together in the same room. We actually, we can't see or hear you, but you can see and hear us. So that's how the webinar will work. But that doesn't mean that you're not welcome to comment or add questions as we go through the webinar. So you can use the chat box at the bottom right of your screen to submit questions or comments all the way through the webinar, and we'll do our very best to pick out those and come back to them as we go along. We do have actually 3 designated points during the webinar for answering questions. That's after 2 presentations we have from projects and also at the end. So we'll be keeping an eye out for any comments or questions you have as we go along. We will actually also be recording the webinar, so we will put it on the programme website as we have done with our webinars when we're done here today, so you can share it with colleagues or return to certain parts if you'd like to do so. So that's really mainly about the technicalities. We're here for an hour today, and now you know who Sophie and I are because we're sat right in front of you. We're also very happy to have with us today our national contact points. And actually, when it comes to communicating for impact and capitalisation, they're very good friends to have, because they work also hand in hand with the Secretariat in helping to really show off what your projects have achieved at national level. With the exception of Denmark, there are actually national contact points in each of the North Sea region countries. So they're very good points to have. They will help you, of course, reach out to relevant stakeholders as well. So they also organise events which you can link to and use as an opportunity to show off what your project has done. And Sophie will come back to this a bit later in her presentation, right?
Right.
Where she has some examples of this to show. Very good. So now you know who we are. We know you know about the national contact points, and actually we know who most of you are because you registered for the webinar. So we saw your email addresses and names, but so I think it would be very useful maybe for you all to learn who is in this webinar room. So we've created a small poll, which I will put on the screen now, where you can basically just list or choose your role in the project. So if you give me a second, I will put the poll on. Oh, okay. So here you can choose one of the options, what your role is in the project. Just move this up here so we can see a bit what's coming up on the screen.
Oh, Lisa, it's good to see that we both have communications experts and leaders of the communication work packages.
Yeah,
and also some project managers, it seems.
That's right. So it's really good that we have also so many project managers, I think, because I think project managers are crucial in pushing communication in the project. So yeah. Okay, I'll end the voting now. Let's just have a look at here we are, at the results. So hopefully you can see the results on your screen now. Yeah, that's good. So we have some lead people leading communication work package, communication experts, consultants, other and not applicable, and I'm assuming that's because that's our colleagues from the JS or national contact points. So, but a very warm welcome to you all. Now, I would like to just explain a little bit what we're going to cover in the webinar. I think that's an important point to cover, so you know what to expect and what's on the horizon. So I'll hand over to Sophie in just a moment, and she'll give a presentation, really just a bit about the background about communicating for impact and how we perceive it here in the JS and how we want to help projects work with this topic now and in the future. And it also has some great examples in the presentation about what projects are actually doing now in terms of shining the light on their achievements. So we'll go to that in a moment. We're extremely happy today to have two North Sea region projects joining the webinar. We have the Share North project and we have Topsoil, and Rebecca Carbomber from Share North and Jolene Phillips from the Topsoil project will be sharing their experiences of what they're doing in their project to really help use communication as a tool to shine the light on what they've achieved. So thank you very much to them in advance for joining us today. And then at the end we have some time for questions and answers. So we will be picking up your comments as we go through, right, Sophie, in the yes, in the chat box. And just to add now, we will also take questions at the end of each of the project presentations, because it might be you want some more information there. So we'll stop for a moment there and review that too. Great. Well, time to get going, I think. Yeah. So I will then hand over to Sophie, and she'll make her presentation.
Thank you very much, Lisa. So let's take a look at what capitalization is and how you can use communication as a tool to create more impact for your project. This is something that we very much want to see in the program, because creating impact for your project is the ultimate yardstick of success. And so what is capitalization? In Interreg, capitalization happens when you manage to transfer your main project outcomes to external bodies outside of your project partnership and beyond your pilots. And to understand why communication plays such a vital role in making this happen, let's look at what a capitalization process might look like. So a way to look at this is to roughly divide this into 4 steps. In step 1, you will produce your outcomes that are relevant for other bodies to use. This can be anything from a guide to a toolkit or a set of policy recommendations. And so to create uptake for your outcomes outside of your partnership, you naturally need to disseminate and communicate to the relevant stakeholders. But in order to do this, you very often will need to go through step 2 here in the slide, where you compile and package information about your outcomes in such a way that it becomes accessible and attractive to those stakeholders. So let's say you have measured your impacts across your pilots, then you might want to synthesize those impacts into one report or maybe an infographic. And once you have your information nicely packaged, you can go to step 3. This is the step where you actually disseminate your information to the relevant stakeholders. Exactly how you do that will depend entirely on the types of outcomes that you've got and for whom they are relevant. Who would like to pick them up? So as an example, let's say your project is about sustainable farming. And one of your outcomes is a set of farming techniques or agricultural techniques. To generate any uptake for this outcome, you would naturally want to touch base with the farmers. So they would be your natural target group. And you might also want to touch base with agricultural associations or farming schools that are close to the farmers. How you choose to do that will depend on what is relevant for the farmers. So one example might be video testimonials featuring the farmers that have been active in your pilots. Another example could be providing training for farmers. So those could be relevant activities in that case. So it all depends on the outcomes and the specific target groups for whom they are relevant. Step 4, the final step. This is where capitalization actually happens. This is when a farmer decides to apply those techniques that you are promoting. And while you have no direct control over whether this happens or not, you can make it a lot more likely by taking a lot of care in the steps 2 and 3. And these are essentially communication. So as you can see, communication plays a very important role in capitalization. And let's take a look at a deeper look at how you can craft your communication to make that happen. I would like to draw your attention to 3 points to keep in mind when you communicate your outcomes. So first of all, as we saw in the example with the farmers, you need to raise awareness in an effective way where you choose your channels and your tools, and the way you communicate, design that to those target groups. However, raising awareness of your outcomes doesn't mean that they will be taken up and used. So to make that even more likely to happen, you should think about the convincing arguments. Why do your techniques work? Why should people follow your guidance? Why should they use your toolkit or your digital platform or whatever it is? That's because it works and it brings benefits. So that's where you can bring your pilots into play. And if you have demonstrated feasibility, benefits, or impacts, like environmental impacts, those are strong convincing arguments. And bringing in people who have actually benefited in your pilots to talk about it can be quite strong. Finally, even though you have convinced other people about your outcomes, there still might be some resistance to actually using them, just because of human nature. Why should we change the way we always do things? And because there might be hierarchies, so you might have convinced a person about the good idea, but that person might need to convince other people in their organization. So to facilitate this, you could also think about how to make it easy for others to use your outcomes. This might be as simple as providing your contact information and making yourself available in case they would like your advice. You can also think about providing training for the target groups, for example. So there are multiple ways in which you can make it easier to actually adopt your solutions. So now we have covered what capitalization is and how you can work with that. Now let's have a short quiz to see whether we are all aligned about these concepts. And I'll just bring it up. Sorry, we need to close this. And there's only one question. You need to determine which of the 4 sentences below are examples of indirect capitalization. And you can pick any statements from 1 statement to 4. And I will give you about 30 seconds to complete this exercise. It's very interesting. Okay, so now I'm going to end the voting.
Yeah, I think that's timing.
Let's see the results. So let's go through these answers. So the first sentence said, your project gets a lot of media coverage. Is that capitalization? Actually, it isn't. This is the step before capitalization happens, because you might get a lot of media coverage, but that doesn't mean necessarily that any other organization outside of your project partnership is going to adopt your solution. It can certainly help spread the message, and it might lead to capitalization, but it isn't capitalization as such. The next sentence, a university in Spain starts using your methodology and analysis as part of their curriculum. That is definitely capitalization, because this is an outside organization that adopts an outcome from your project. The third sentence reads, several companies in the North Sea region develop a new prototype based on the model your project developed. Again, that is capitalization, because these companies are actually using an outcome from your project, and they are building on it to create something new. That is also capitalization. They don't have to just adopt what you have done and use it as it is. They can also build on it. It's still capitalization. They are using your outcomes for good stuff. The last sentence says, the United Nations ask you to provide a speech about your project at a major world event. That is certainly very interesting and a very big highlight for any North Sea region project when that happens. However, it is not capitalization, because capitalization might certainly happen as a result of this speech. If you do a great speech and if the right stakeholders are attending, then you might see some uptake of your solutions. But in itself, it's not capitalization. It is the step before capitalization. So I hope that clarified the concepts a little bit. The reason why we did this quiz is that there is a lot of confusion about capitalization, isn't there, Lisa?
Yes, I tried the quiz yesterday and failed one of the questions. So yeah, it gets you thinking about what do you mean? Yeah.
Yes, and that's because communication plays a really important role in generating capitalization, while capitalization itself isn't really anything you can control. That's where the confusion comes in. So now let's go back to the presentation. Do I need to close it?
Yeah.
Sorry. There we go. Yeah. So now that we are clear on the actual concept of capitalization, let's take a look at a few projects and what they are doing to communicate outcomes. The first example I have here is the InnoQuarter project. InnoQuarter provides supports to startups to test their products and services at festivals. And they use videos featuring these startup people, the young entrepreneurs, very much as part of their communication mix. And these videos can serve a number of purposes. And one of them is actually capitalization, because a number of these startups are talking about, in the video, about how this concept of coming to a festival is actually a great support from them. So this kind of video could help convince others who are looking to how can we support young entrepreneurs. They might want to adopt this concept that InnoQuarter is using based on the videos. And I have picked this example because I think videos featuring testimonials from users, end users, those who really benefit from your solutions, is a very strong way of communicating an outcome. So I would definitely recommend you to think about that. The next example is the project Begin. Begin works to reduce flood resilience in cities through blue-green infrastructure. And they have come to a point where they're able to share good results and experiences in a number of pilots that they have done. So they put together a communication package where they have created a fact sheet summarizing the results and benefits and experiences from each pilot in a fact sheet. This is combined with a social media campaign, and complementing that, they also have a wealth of online information that goes deeper, like, for example, a set of policy recommendations, where you do not only get a list of recommendations, you can also click on the individual recommendation, and then you get a recipe for how to actually realize that policy recommendation. And this is further backed up by further evidence cases from the pilots. So they've done a quite clever and comprehensive job on communicating outcomes, which could certainly lead to capitalization in the form of other cities wanting to adopt the concepts from Begin. And Begin has already seen some capitalization, like additional investments and some policy influence. Now, Partridge is a completely different project. So they're looking into how you can raise biodiversity in agricultural landscapes. And one of their communication methods that has turned out to be very helpful in capitalization is farm walks, where they bring a range of stakeholders together to take a walk in the pilots and see for themselves what is happening there and how the measures are actually creating habitat. Part of the stakeholders that they have managed to attract for these farm walks are politicians. So they have invited cabinet ministers for farm walks, and they have even had the agricultural commissioner for a farm walk. And this project has seen capitalization as well. So there are farmers inside and beyond the North Sea region that are adopting the Partridge measures, and the measures have also been integrated in policies in several cases. As you can see from the little insert, this project has gone the extra mile to provide physical branding as well, which can be helpful when they invite the media, for example. The last example I would like to mention is the LIKE project. LIKE works to improve public services based on digital innovation. And they have had a number of really interesting pilots that were highly successful, ranging from digital democracy platforms, where they had more than 1,000 young voters in Scotland, for example, to hackathons for vulnerable groups like the elderly and for people with a handicap. And the project is now closed, but just before closure, they put together some very nice-looking magazines in just presenting all their experiences from the project. And these magazines are available in print, but also online. And I would say that if you are looking to improve public services in a municipality, for example, you can find a lot of inspiration in these magazines. So this communication package is very well designed for the target group of LIKE. Yeah, so these were some examples of what these 4 projects have done. They have done many other things as well to highlight their outcomes. But these were just a little bit of inspiration for you. Before we move on to live presentations from actual projects, let me just remind you that you are not all alone in this effort to highlight your outcomes. We in the North Sea Region Programme are also keen to do whatever we can to help on that. And so we're doing that through events, for example. So we have our own events. We have launched the video contest last year.
That's right.
And we're having the 3rd video contest this year. And this year it's been complemented by a photo contest as well. And we do whatever we can to facilitate projects to take part of European level events as well. So last year we had Tu Imprèche as the winner of the Interreg Project Slam in Brussels. That was a very big achievement. We also try to highlight our projects and their outcomes in our publications, such as the annual report summary and in various Interreg presentations where we get to also communicate about our projects. Finally, we have our blog where you have a standing invitation to provide articles. We're going to ask each project to provide a final article summarizing your outcomes. So be prepared for that. And last but not least, I would like to highlight our national contact points again. As Lisa mentioned, they're doing a tremendous amount of work to help communicate and disseminate. And these are just some examples. So in the UK, Vanessa Pilley, the national contact point, has facilitated the creation of fact sheets for projects that have a UK beneficiary. And to the right, you can see an effort going on in Flanders, where the national contact point, Sandra van der Wiele, has been busy very recently collecting images and text for a digital platform that has gone live now that presents a range of different EU-funded projects. It's a very nice site, and it's really good visibility in Flanders for your projects. And of course, as Lisa mentioned, they also engage in events at national level. So keep an eye on the contact points. And if you have really cool achievements and highlights or outcomes that you would like to disseminate, please let us know at the Secretariat, and please reach out to the relevant national contact points as well, so we're all informed and can help. And with this, I would like to hand over to the first project presenter.
Yeah, that's right, Sophie. So that's Jolene Phillips from Topsoil Project. So we just need to then welcome Jolene to the webinar and to you other participants. And let's see if we can get the screen shared so our participants can also see Jolene.
It can take a while.
Yes. And the lights have gone off in the room.
So the Topsoil Project has also been quite successful in terms of capitalization. I can just mention while we're waiting. So they've seen some policy uptake, and they've seen also some uptake of a very advanced technique. So
let's just have a look here and see if we can. This has been enabled as a presenter. Okay, we'll just give a few more seconds and see if we can connect.
Unlock me. You can't do that.
I don't think so, not when she's a presenter. Okay. Okay, I think what we should maybe do is invite Rebecca Carbar from the Share North project to present first, and then maybe we can try and find a solution with Jolene so she can connect, because I don't think we're having the connection right now. So instead, good morning, Rebecca.
Hi everybody, hello.
A very warm
Seeing lots of familiar names in the list of participants, so nice to meet you again.
So we hand over to you then, please, Rebecca, to share some of your examples of how you are focusing on communicating your impact. That would be great. Thanks.
So you'll bring up my presentation?
Yes.
Because I'd like to talk to you about...
2 seconds.
I'd like to talk to you about how we communicate in the Share North project, to share some examples. Let's talk about shared mobility, baby. So, next slide, please, already. So, a couple of years ago, there was an implementation seminar in Bremen, and Christian Barrett, the head of the Secretariat, said something that we took to heart in the Share North project. If a project took place and nobody talked about it, did it really happen? And the question is often, no, it didn't. You have to talk about your project. And therefore, communication is really a strong suit of the Share North project. We try to adapt our communication strategies to our specific target groups, whether those are businesses, public stakeholders, private stakeholders, research institutions, end users. There's no one communication style fits all. And we've got a lot of good examples of individual communication activities with project partners, but also how we cooperate together to communicate, whether it's local events in conjunction with our partner meetings or joint sessions at international conferences. We take communication seriously, but we also have fun with it. So here are a few examples. And next slide, please. A few examples of how we collaborate in a truly, transnational sense. And this is an example of capitalization, as we learned from Sophie and Lisa just now. Mobilpunkt, Mobilpunkt, Mobihub, Mobility Hubs. 4 names, same concept. This is an example of an implementation project that started in the early 2000s already in Bremen, but because we talked about it and had people come visit and had planning seminars and presentations, all sorts of things, we were able to inspire so many other places to do the same. like the city of Bergen, who has since 2018 also been implementing mobilpunkte and adapting and expanding on that concept. And that has led to inspiration of the concept into Flanders, the MobiHub concept, which is now a national priority with the Flemish government backing this concept and providing millions of euros of budget so that municipalities in Flanders can implement MobiHubs. And now, with the project extension, we're working on expanding that concept into the UK. So there we go, example of capitalization in projects. Next slide, please.
Yep.
And by creating a joint branding for this concept, this was developed by our Flemish project partners, Taxistop and Autodelen.net, we've been able to generate a lot of buzz around mobility concepts. And we're seeing this pictogram as an example in so many presentations. And I'm surprised that I'm at a conference and I see this pictogram and it's not from one of our project partners. That's a real sign of success because it's so much use. So if any of you watching see this pictogram, look for the Interreg logo. It's in there somewhere, and then you know, that's from the Share North project. But we're really excited about that buzz that's generating. Next slide, please. There we go. And it's not something that is just a local initiative. Obviously, our project partners all have their own websites in the, in their own national languages to create a more local buzz. But it's really a core part of the Share North project that everybody communicates where these ideas are from. So on the national website, it's always communicated as a product and inspired by the Share North project and Share North partners. And here's an example in the top left from the Flemish website, and then the bottom right example from the website in the Netherlands. Next slide, please. And then in the UK, here are communication materials developed in English language, of course, for the UK context, but also is clearly focusing on the inspiration through the Share North partners, all the way down to the communication materials used to advertise mobility hubs and the mobilpunkte on a local level. Like there you see the green poster and on the top right-hand side. Next slide, please. And now I'd like to segue into the communication campaigns that we do for end users. So the last example was capitalizing on ideas and generating buzz for public stakeholders, politicians, and municipalities. And here is an example of one of the many communication campaigns in the Share North project geared at the end users of shared mobility. And this is a car sharing campaign, for example, that we've done here in Bremen with our mascot, Use It, Don't Own It. And it's something we've developed a branding and we've stuck with it and been really, really consistent with this message over many years, so that this is a well-known figure and the city has generated quite a lot of awareness. 85% of Bremen residents know about car sharing and think it's a good idea. And we can attribute that to very consistent communication campaigns through the project and by the city of Bremen. But Udo is not only something we use in Bremen. Udo also speaks Norwegian, Dutch, English, and German. So this is a figure that we've used for several campaigns. So we will also, just look out for that for the next video competition, be debuting a new Udo film. Next slide, please. Another thing, with COVID-19 and our different styles of working, webinars are, all the rage now. But in Share North, we were doing it before it was cool. So we've been doing regular webinars since the beginning of the project in 2016 on a variety of topics. We've done more than 14 webinars. We've done an entire 2-day planning academy as a webinar. And things like that have been really useful for reaching other target groups and a much broader audience, and especially those who don't have the budget or are not allowed to travel to international conferences. So we are able to reach a lot, a lot more local initiatives that way. So we've reached hundreds and hundreds of participants to our webinars. Next slide, please. And another thing, and it's what I'll end with, is that Share North is known for its unconventional, maybe edgy and slightly provocative events. This is an event that's organized by our Flemish project partners, Autodelen.net and Taxistop, but all of the Share North partners contribute to this event with input and organizing. It's the Shared Mobility Rocks annual Shared Mobility Symposium. So it's a symposium geared at people from the field with a different flair. Next slide, please. And nobody says that a conference or workshop conference has to be dull. It can be exciting and have a really rockin' atmosphere. And the picture on the left are the two project partners there taking a selfie with the audience and the keynote speakers, like at a rock concert. There's a conference T-shirt that features the names of all of the performers, just like at a rock festival. And we've even got the European Commission involved and excited about this this event. At the bottom, there's a picture of Isabelle van Doorn from DG Move. So this is a way of creating buzz and creating really creative, communicative atmosphere around a conventional symposium on shared mobility, and is a lot of fun. So next slide, please. Therefore, I would like to invite all of you to join us in December in Brussels. Hopefully we'll be able to meet them again in person by then, for the third Shared Mobility Rocks conference festival event, the unconventional, surprising and inspiring symposium on shared mobility. So that's all. Next slide, please. If you want to learn more about the Share North project, you can visit the share-north.eu, our website, for examples and links and invitations to events that we have coming up. Thanks very much.
Great, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for your inputs. Quite a lot of inspiration there, and obviously you have been extremely busy. And one thing I take away from the presentation is you've been doing this also for a very long time, and have had a really good opportunity to build up your brand, which is great. You can see that. We have some questions, so we'll just come into our question and answer mode so we can publish some of them. And Rebecca, if you'd be kind enough, I can read them out, and I think you should be able to see them on screen. Yeah. So the first one is, how is communications work organised in the project? Who has overall responsibility, and what is the role of the partners? Do you use external communication experts?
Okay, yeah, thanks for the question, Kate. We do have, obviously the formal structures of the work package for communication, and the lead beneficiary, that's Bremen, is responsible for that. However, the communication of the project is really a co-creative and collaborative effort. For instance, the new film that we're working on together is a jointly created storyboard and jointly approved and covered by the shared costs that we have in the project. So we've all got separate local initiatives, but at the same time, if partners are interested in using a communication initiative created by one of the partners, we all support each other in doing that. So it's maybe also a result of the long time that we've been working together as a consortium. It's been 4 years already, so there's a really high level of trust, and this jointly working together is just part of our project culture. So we try to jointly capitalize on those ideas.
Great, thanks very much. We have another question. Maybe Sophie, if you could publish that. Yes. Do you have external sponsors for the Rock Symposium? Yes, we do. So part of it comes from the Share North funding, but our Flemish partners also collaborate with local partners, if it's the local government or some other NGOs to finance it. Yeah. Combination then. Yeah. Yeah, combination. Great. Okay, I think that's it. We don't have any more questions. Yeah. Rebecca, so a very big thank you, Rebecca, to
Yeah.
you.
Thanks for inviting us. Bye.
Thank you very much. Great, let's try and get Jolene back into the webinar. Well, I think she's in the webinar, but let's try and get her back as a presenter so she can then say something about the topsoil project. Let's just see now if we can connect again to Jolene.
So video and audio are not enabled, it seems.
Maybe something is happening now. Hello, Jolene.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can indeed, yes. Welcome. We cannot see you, but I think we can function with sound if you are comfortable enough with that to proceed.
Yes, of course. I have no idea what's going wrong, but I'll just start and we see if it starts working.
Okay, super. We will do your presentation now. So we'll just put your presentation on the screen.
All right, thank you.
Very good. So over to you then, Jolene. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So hi everyone, I'm Jolien from Flanders Environment Agency, or in short VMM. I've been working on the communication for the topsoil project since 2 years now. The objective of topsoil is development of methods to describe and manage the uppermost 30 meters of the subsurface in order to improve climate resilience. Or said in a more easy way, topsoil is all about understanding the water beneath your feet. The project has 16 partners and 11 pilot projects, which is quite a lot. But after 4 years, it's safe to say that the project is rather successful, and there are many factors that contributed to that success. But if I would have to identify the key success factor, it would be the high level of involvement that was reached. Oh, next slide, please. Thank you. I know this sounds very vague, and I can imagine that you're probably rolling your eyes right now, but I'll give specific examples right away. For topsoil, it was important to realize that there are different levels of stakeholder engagement and communication, ranging from informing stakeholders right through engaging them. And that's why a stakeholder involvement guide was developed in the beginning of the project. Next slide, please. If you're interested in reading it, you can find it on our website. Although we only started the so-called official capitalization phase of our project last month, some of our methods and techniques are already applied by other organizations. And I believe that is because of the high involvement level of our target groups and stakeholders. We have made a clear distinction between communication on a project level and on a pilot level. And by making that distinction, the organizations involved in the pilots are capable of using their already existing networks. For example, we have the TETM methods, which is a ground-based electromagnetic system designed for mapping the shallow subsurface in a fast and cost-efficient way. It was developed by our partner Aarhus University within topsoil. And during the project, one of the scientists worked together with Stanford University in Canada and informed them about this technique, which has led to Stanford to actually apply the TETM methods right now. Another thing that we've learned when it comes to reaching involvement is to define specific activities for specific target groups. For example, we want to reach European policymakers, and that's why we organized our so-called Policy Day last year. We invited policymakers to Brussels and organized a roundtable in which results and advices for the policymakers were discussed on the spot. Another example is that we want to reach the general public by using an animation video, and it seems to work for now. Another example can be found in our Belgian pilots. For VMM, it's sometimes difficult to engage with farmers because there's not much trust. But by working together with the Flemish farmer organization Inagro, it was possible to have open discussions with the farmers. This close cooperation with that organization has now led to the fact that the farmer agreed on implementing an innovative measure called creek ridge infiltration to increase water quantity on the property of the farmer. A different example is how the Rivers Trust in the UK organized in-depth sessions with farmers explaining groundwater models used to protect drinking water boreholes. by taking the time to understand the struggles of the farmers and creating an environment of trust, they convinced farmers to apply new measures. They really understood that they had to take time to explain and demonstrate possible measures. The last thing that I would like to emphasize is that it can be very useful to reach involvement by using the already existing partner networks. For example, VMM organized an event last year in which we presented the results of 2 Interact projects to our stakeholders. With the event, we reached more than 30 water managers and landowners. And this was possible because we realized that both projects wanted to reach water managers and landowners. So why not combine them and increase the uptake of the results? As I've said before, Topsoil just started the official capitalization phase. And to guide the partners through this process, we are now developing a capitalization strategy. In this document, a distinction is made between communication activities and the technical aspects necessary to support the uptake. Once again, the communication activities differ depending on the involvement level you want to reach, so inform, involve, or engage, and whether the activity is on a project level or a pilot level. So for a partner, it's very clear what is expected from them during this capitalization. Another thing we included in the strategy is the business modeling of some of our methods, such as the T10 methods. Since most of our partners have a scientific background, it's useful to look at the economic side and to support the uptake of the activities. Specifically, this means that we will sit together with relevant partners during the next partner meeting and create an easy-to-understand business model to have a clear overview of what is needed to make the results sustainable after the end of the project. I know this was a very short explanation. I have many more examples to give if you're interested. So if you don't have enough time to answer questions, feel free to contact me and I'll make sure that you can get in touch with our relevant partners. And thank you for your attention.
Great. Just waiting to connect ourselves here. Thank you very much for your contribution, Jolien. That was very, very helpful and a very interesting presentation. You certainly focused, we can hear you're starting to focus a lot on capitalization now and also with this strategy that you're working on. So let's see if we have any questions, if that's all right. Just have a look in the chat box now.
There don't seem to be any questions about this presentation, but I certainly got some nice takeaways from this. So I noticed you mentioned, Jolien, having joint events with other projects and maybe from other programs working together, focusing on the same target group. I thought that is a really good point, and we see that happening in a number of projects, and it seems to be quite effective because it simply widens your reach. And again, the point you made about the networks was also really, really important and very valid. That often makes a big difference. So you can often create like a good virtuous cycle between your communication efforts and the events and the networking. And also being clear on partnership roles in capitalization can be very important. This was also what Rebecca told about the collaborative effort.
Yeah. Everybody in the partnership was on board and engaged, so that was it's really good to hear. It's really encouraging.
Yes,
very good. Okay, well, a big thank you to both of our speakers. Just double checking there aren't any more questions, but I don't think there are for Jolien. No, good. Well, thank you very much to both Rebecca and Jolien for your presentations. Very, very interesting input there.
Sorry, I see there is a question coming up.
Oh, great.
I will just put it on.
Very good.
Is it here?
Yeah.
Here.
Okay, so this is from Harold saying, can you give more information on the business model that you mentioned in your presentation?
Well, we still have to make a business model. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
So we still have to make them. We're now developing one for creek-rich infiltration as an example for the other partners, but we will really sit together with the partners during the next partner meetings, because it's not easy when you have a scientific background, to take a step back and see the costs, the benefits, and the needs you're actually fulfilling. So we still have to develop them.
It's in the pipeline then. Good. Okay, I think there's another question. Sophie, maybe if you publish that, we can have a look and see.
Yes.
Have a look at that one.
Here it is.
Okay, so where can we find the stakeholder involvement strategy, please?
Oh, it's published on our website under publications. Maybe
Okay.
I can send a link to Sophie to publish it with her presentations if you want.
Very good.
That would be very helpful.
Yeah. Thank you. Great. Is there one more question? I think we have time for one more. Or are we?
So one of the participants has trouble hearing you and me.
Okay.
So if others are facing the same problem, let us know. Otherwise, there are no further questions.
Okay, very good. So then I think it's time anyway to start wrapping up. Again, thank you both to our speakers. It's great, some great inputs there from the real world, so to say. So I think it's time for you've been listening now for a very long time as a participant in the webinar. So it would be great now to have some questions and answers you might have. I can see there's been some coming along as we go through the presentation. So we have some time for this now before we close. But just to show you a slide now, I think this one. This is just about us communicating our impacts with the transnational programs. So there are, now forgive me, 13 or 15, I can't remember, other transnational cooperation programs. And in 2018, they actually all came together to develop a set of joint messages, right, common messages, really showing what transnational cooperation is all about. And it was a great initiative. And basically, as a result of this, an exhibition was held as part of European Week of Regions and Cities in 2018. And here these 10 messages were presented as part of an exhibition. And included in that were examples of projects from programs, really showing what cooperation, transnational cooperation was all about. So I think this is just a really good example of what's going on at even another level in terms of showing off what projects are achieving.
Yes, and looking at this slide reminds me of something, and that is, please do not underestimate the value of having great visuals and photos.
Yeah.
Authentic photos from your projects can really make a difference. Also, if you want to put yourself forward for a competition or any kind of visibility opportunity at European level, it is very, very common that you are asked to provide photos, and that's part of the selection process. So it can make a big difference in making your outcomes visible.
Yeah, I think that was one thing you can say about the exhibition that you had here, Sophie. It was very, very colourful and very visual, and it makes a difference.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, before we end, we would just like to see then if there's any more questions and answers. Maybe there's something more in general about capitalisation and Sophie's presentation. I saw there were a few questions earlier on, so maybe let's just scroll up and have a look. Maybe if you
Try
to click on that one.
on that one. Oh.
And then maybe
Try to scroll.
try to scroll, yeah.
Okay, like this.
Having a small technical issue with if we press the question and answer mode here, and then we'll try and click over the question and answer mode here again, and we'll just see if there's any more questions come in. Or maybe there was some at the beginning that we missed. Let's have a quick look now.
Here.
This is a nice one. Very good. What about communicating with politicians? Well,
that's a broad question, Kate. But we do see some projects having influence on policy. And so one example that we provided today was the PARTRIDGE project that invites policymakers to join their farm walks. And they have also generated broad media coverage, quite impressive media coverage that probably also helps in making policymakers interested in what they're doing. I would like to ask if there are any stakeholders present today that would like to share any tips about how to communicate with politicians.
Yeah, it's a good. It's not always easy. I think it's probably one of the hardest groups to nail into. To be honest, I think
it's not easy.
Yeah.
No.
There's a message come up.
Here is one answer.
Carefully. Yeah. Yes, I think. Yeah. It's a fine balance that I imagine in terms of not providing too much, not pushing too much, but also just gaining the interest.
Yes. I mean, what we certainly do see happening in some projects is a list of policy recommendation. So again, packaging, whatever you have to say, how you want to influence the politicians, being really clear on what are the policy barriers to implementing new good solutions, and what needs to be changed in policy to facilitate good new solutions. To present that in a way that is easy to understand and grasp for a policymaker who is typically not an expert.
Yeah.
That's definitely one of the key points.
Great. If we scroll to the top of the question and answers, I think after your presentation there was maybe a couple of points from a few participants. No, okay.
I don't see them.
No, okay. That's good then. I think we've covered all the questions we have in the question box.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
We've covered all.
But anyway, we're coming up to the end of our hour, so I think it's time for some thank yous. Thank you to you all, mostly for joining the webinar. This is a new experience for us in the Secretariat, so we're also learning a lot about this process. A big thank you to both Rebecca and Jolene for joining us today. I think it's nothing better than listening to projects themselves. We thank the contact points, our national contact points, for joining us. I didn't say earlier, but you can actually find all of their contact details under contact information on the programme website. So, or just get in touch with Sophie and I, and we will help put you in touch. And I think that's about it. One final thing to ask you to do when you finish this webinar is please don't close your browser, because you'll be taken directly to a survey or a very short evaluation, just asking for some feedback about how it went in the last hour. And actually this is really valuable for us because, as I said, we are learning. So any input you have on how we can make this better is very much appreciated. I think we draw to a close. And thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Bye.